and we're going to do something a little bit different, which is that we're going to hear some of the question and answer period that followed this talk. This is from the Vault, the Alan Watts Archives, and it's a bit of history that has never been aired before. As a matter of fact, I don't think anybody has ever heard this unless they were there at the original session. And it's a delightful piece because you get my father interacting with the audience and telling some great stories and just generally bringing out a different dimension of his relationship with the audience. So this is going to become a regular feature here on this podcast and also on play.alanwatts.org, which will be dedicated to airing remastered series and also to new materials out of the vault. Well, not new. They're all at least 50 years old, but new to your ears in that many, many of these have never been aired before, and like the one today, and others haven't been heard in 30 or 40 years. This podcast is co-produced with the Ram Dass Be Here Now network, and our music is provided by Moment Records and is Zakir Hussain from the Rhythm Experience album. So here's Alan Watts in Relevance of Eastern Philosophy, and after the talk, I'll give you that address for the Play channel again, and enjoy today's program.
But you see, this is not atheism in the ordinary sense. Atheism in the ordinary sense is fervently hoping that there isn't a God. But I'm afraid, you see, that this movement is going to issue in what someone described as Christian secularism. The assumption that there is nothing at all to life except a pilgrimage between the maternity ward and the crematorium. And that it is within that span that Christian concern must be exercised, because that's all there is. Well, it is true, that's pretty much common sense these days. I very much doubt whether most religious people believe in their religion. Not really. It's become unplausible. You know, even Jehovah's Witnesses are pretty polite when they come round to the door. If they really believed what they were talking about, they'd be screaming in the streets. If some Catholics believed what they're talking about, they would be making an awful fuss. They would be having the most horrendous television programs that would make Batman look like nothing. They would have full-page ads in the papers about the terrible things that would happen if you didn't, and more so if you did. And they would be very serious about it. But nobody is. Because it has become extremely plausible that this trip between the maternity ward and the crematorium is what there is to life. And we still have, going into our common sense, the 19th century myth, which succeeded the ceramic myth in Western history. I call it the myth of the fully automatic model of the universe. Namely, that it's stupid. It's blind force, Haeckel's gyration or fortuitous congress of atoms is of the same vintage as Freud's libido, the blind surge of lust at the basis of human psychology. You see what was going on? Man was indulging in a put-down attitude to the world and saying, enough of wishful thinking. Belief in God and someone up there who cares is for little old ladies and weak spirits. We are tough these days. We face facts. And therefore, by making the universe seem as banal as it could possibly be, one advertised one's own hard-headedness. This was a kind of role-playing. But when you consider this attitude, you know, what is the poetic counterpart of it? Man is a little germ that lives on an unimportant rock ball that revolves about an insignificant star on the outer edges of one of the smaller galaxies. God, what a put down that was. But on the other hand, if you think about that for a few minutes, I am absolutely amazed to discover myself on this rock ball rotating around a spherical fire. It's a very odd situation. And the more I look at things, I cannot get rid of the feeling that existence is quite weird. I know that. See, a philosopher is a sort of intellectual yokel who gawks at things that sensible people take for granted. And sensible people, existence is nothing at all. I mean, it's just basic, and just go on and do something. See, this is the current movement in philosophy. Logical analysis says you mustn't think about existence. It's a meaningless concept. Therefore, philosophy has become the discussion of trivia. And philosophical journals is now as satisfactorily dull as any other kind of purely technical inquiry. No good philosopher lies awake nights worrying about the destiny of man and the nature of God and all that sort of thing, because a philosopher today is a practical fellow who comes to the university with a briefcase at 9 and leaves at 5. He does philosophy during the day, which is discussing whether certain sentences have meaning, and if so, what. And then he would, as William Earle said in a very funny essay, he would come to work in a white coat if he thought he could get away with it. The problem is he's lost his sense of wonder. Wonder is like, in modern philosophy, something you mustn't have. It's like enthusiasm in 18th century England. It's very bad form. But you see, I don't know what question to ask when I wonder about the universe. It isn't a question that I'm wondering about. It's a feeling that I have. Imagine if you had an interview with God. Everybody was going to have an interview with God, and you were allowed to ask one question. What would you ask? And don't rush into it. You will soon find that you have no idea what to ask. Because I cannot formulate the question that is my wonder. The moment my mouth opens to utter it, I suddenly find I'm talking nonsense. But that should not prevent wonder from being the foundation of philosophy. Well, as Aristotle said, wonder is the beginning of philosophy. Because it strikes you that existence is very, very strange. And then more so when this so-called insignificant little creature has inside his skull a neurological contraption that is able to center itself in the midst of these incredible expanse of galaxies and start measuring the whole thing. That is quite extraordinary. And then furthermore, when you realize that in a world where there are no eyes, the sun would not be light. And that in a world where there were no soft skins, rocks would not be hard. Nor in a world where there were no muscles would they be heavy. Existence is relationship, and you are smack in the middle of it. So there is obviously a place in life for a religious attitude in the sense of awe, astonishment at existence. And that is also a basis of respect for existence. We don't have very much of it in this culture, even though we call it materialistic. A materialist is a person who loves material. And I suppose in the Christian tradition and in the Jewish, one would say that the Lord God is the greatest materialist. Because, you know, as William Temple once said, God is interested in many other things than religion. Were God only interested in religion, the world would consist of nothing but church buildings and Bibles and clergymen. And that would be pretty boring. So, in the culture that we call materialistic today, we are, of course, bent on the total destruction of material and its conversion into junk and poisonous gas as quickly as possible. This is not a materialistic culture because it has no respect for material. And respect is in turn based on wonder, on feeling the marvel of just an ordinary pebble in your fingers. So I'm afraid, you see, for the God is dead theology, that it will sort of drift off into secular do-goodery in the name of Jesus. And this is, I think, where we can be strongly revivified and stimulated by the introduction into our spiritual life of certain things that are Oriental. Now, you see, it must be understood that the crux of the Hindu and Buddhist disciplines is an experience, not a theory, not a belief. If we say that a religion is a combination of creed, code, and cult, in other words, this is true of Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. And if they are religions, Buddhism is not. Because the creed is a revelation, a revealed symbolism of what the universe is about, and you are commanded to believe in it on the divine authority. The code is the revealed will of God for man, which you are commanded to obey, and the cult is the divinely revealed form of worship which you must practice. Commandment, because God is boss, he's ruler, King of kings and Lord of lords. But the disciplines, say, of yoga in Hinduism or of the various forms of Buddhist meditation do not require you to believe anything. And they have no commandments in them. They do indeed have precepts, but they are really vows which you undertake and on your own responsibility, not in obedience to anybody. They are experimental techniques for changing consciousness. And the thing they are mainly concerned with is helping human beings to get rid of the hallucination that each one of us is a skin-encapsulated ego. You know, a little source, a little man inside your head located between the ears and behind the eyes, who is the source of conscious attention and voluntary behavior. Most people, you know, don't really think that they are anything but that, and the body is a thing you have. Mummy, who would I have been if my father had been someone else? See, the parents give you the body and you pop the soul into it at some period, conception or parturition, nobody could ever decide. And this attitude stays with us, that we are something in a body, that we have a body, and we are not it. So we experience the beating of the heart as something that happens to me, whereas talking or walking is something that I do. Don't you beat your heart? Language won't allow you to think that. It's not customary to say so. How do you think? How do you manage to be conscious? You don't know. How do you open and close your hand? Do you know? If you're a physiologist, you may be able to say, but that doesn't help you to open and close your hand any better than I do. See, I know how to do it, but I can't put it into words. In the same way, the Hindu God knows how he creates this whole universe because he does it. But he wouldn't explain it. That would be stupid. You might as well try to drink the Pacific Ocean with a fork. So when a Hindu gets enlightened and he recovers from the hallucination of being a skin-encapsulated ego and finds out that central to his own self is the eternal self of the universe, and you go up to him and say, well, how do you do all this? He says, well, just like you open and close your hand. And because we're all it. Whenever a questioner used to come to Sri Ramana, the great Hindu sage who died a few years ago, they said to him, Master, was I living before in a previous incarnation? And if so, who was I? And he would say, who is asking the question? Who are you? And a spiritual teacher in both Hinduism and Buddhism is a kind of, well, what he does to awaken you, to get you over the hallucination of being the skin-encapsulated ego, he bugs you in a certain way. He has a funny look in his eye, as if to say, come off it, Shiva, I know what you're doing. And you say, what, me? And he looks at you in a funny way. And finally, you get feeling that he sees all the way through you, and therefore that all your selfish and evil thoughts and nastinesses are transparent to this gaze. And then you have to try and alter them. He suggests, you see, that you practice the control of the mind, that you become desireless. You give up selfish desire so as to cease to be a skin-encapsulated self. And then you may have some success in quieting your mind and in concentrating. But then after that, he'll throw a curve at you, which is, but aren't you still desiring not to desire? Why are you trying to be unselfish? Well, the answer is, I want to be on the side of the big battalions. I think it's going to pay better to be unselfish than to be selfish. Well, Luther saw that. Augustine saw that. But there it is. Because what he's done, you see, he's beginning to make you see the unreality, the hallucinatory quality of a separate self. This has merely conventional reality in the same sense as lines of latitude and longitude, the measurements of the clock. That's why one of the meanings of Maya, illusion, is measurement. Things, for example, are measurements. They are units of thought, like inches are units of measurement. There are no things in physical nature. How many things is a thing? It's any number you want. Because a thing is a think, a unit of thought. It's as much of reality as you can catch hold of in one idea. So, when this realization of the hallucination of the separate self comes about, it comes about through discovering that your alleged separate self can't do anything. It can't improve itself, either by doing something about it or by doing nothing about it. Both ways are based on illusion. You see, this is what you have to do to get people out of hallucinations. You make them act consistently on the suppositions of the hallucination. People who believe that the earth is flat cannot possibly be talked into seeing that it's round because they know it's flat. Because can't you see? So what you do is this. You say, let's go and look over the edge. Wouldn't that be fun? But you see, to be sure that we do get to the edge, we must be very careful not to walk in circles. So you perform a discipline. You go steadily and rigorously westwards along latitude 40 or something. And then when you get back to the place where you started, he is convinced that the world is at least cylindrical. By experiment. By reductio ad absurdum of his premises. And so in the same way, the guru, whether Hindu or Buddhist, performs a reductio ad absurdum on the premise of the skin-encapsulated ego. Well, what happens then? You might imagine from garbled accounts of Eastern mysticism that one thereupon disappears forever into an infinite sea of faintly mauve jello. And become so lost to the world and entranced that you forget your name, address, telephone number, and function in life. And nothing of the kind happens. The state of mystical illumination, although it may, in its sudden onset, be accompanied by a sensation of tremendous luminescence and transparency, as you get used to it, it's just like everyday life. Here are the things that you formerly thought were separate individuals, and here is you, who you formerly thought was merely confronting these other people. When the great Dr. D.T. Suzuki was asked, what is it like to be enlightened? He said, it's just like ordinary everyday experience, except about 2 inches off the ground. Because what is altered is not the way your senses perceive. What is altered is what you think about it. Your definitions of what you see. Your evaluation of it. So when you don't cling to it, when you have no longer a hostile attitude to the world because you know the world is you, it is. I mean, let's take it from the point of view of biology. If I describe the behavior of a living organism, I cannot possibly describe that behavior without simultaneously describing the behavior of the environment. So that I discover that I don't describe organisms in environments, I describe a unified field of behavior called an organism environment. It's an awkward word, but there it is. The environment doesn't push the organism around. The organism doesn't push the environment around. They are two aspects or poles of the same process. And so you have to understand that this attitude towards nature, seeing the fundamental unity of the self which manifests it all, is not an attitude, as missionaries are apt to suppose, which denies the value of differentiation. You must understand the principle of what are called identical differences. Take a coin. The head side is a different side from the tail side, and yet the two are inseparable. Take the operation of buying and selling. Selling is a different operation from buying, but you can't buy unless somebody sells at the same time, and vice versa. This is what is meant by the underlying unity of opposites, what is called in Hinduism Advaita, or non-duality. Or when the Chinese use the word Tao to designate the way of operation of the positive and negative principles, the yang and the yin. It is not a unity that annihilates differences, but a unity which is manifested by the very differentiations that we perceive. Just as it's all polar. It's like the two poles of a magnet. Different, but yet one magnet. So when we say Oriental monism is a point of view towards life which merges everything into a kind of sickening goo. This is terribly unfair. It just isn't so. If you argue that the sort of doctrine that everybody is really the Godhead destroys the possibility of real love between individuals, because you have to be definitely other than I if I'm to love you, otherwise it's all self-love, well, that argument collapses in view of the doctrine of the Trinity. If the three persons are one God, then they can't love each other by the same argument. Hinduism simply uses the idea which is in the Christian Trinity, only it makes it a multi-Trinity instead of a three-one. That's all. Of course, the thorn in the flesh is always in approaching a doctrine which seems to be monistic or pantheistic. What about evil? Are we to make the ground of being responsible for evil? And we don't want to do that because we want to keep God's skirts clean. In spite of the fact that our own Hebrew Bible says, I am the Lord, there is none else. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. And haven't you heard the story about the Yetzer Hara? That according to Jewish theology, the Lord God implanted in Adam at the beginning of time a thing called the Yetzer Hara. It means the wayward spirit. I call it the element of irreducible rascality. And it's very necessary to have this in order to be human. You see, how it was done was this prohibition not to eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge. That was the one sure way of getting it eaten. But of course, when the Lord God accused Adam and said, you've been eating of that tree I told you not to eat. And he passed the buck to Eve and said, this woman that thou gavest me, she tempted me and I did eat. And he looked at Eve, now what about it? She said, well, it was the serpent. And he looked at the serpent. The serpent didn't say anything. Because he knew too much and he wasn't going to give away the show. Who is it that sits at the left hand of God? We know who sits at the right hand. It's hushed up, because that's the side where the district attorney sits. And in the book of Job, of course, you know Satan is the district attorney at the court of heaven. He's the prosecutor. He's a faithful servant of the court. Because, you see, the whole problem is, it would be very bad indeed if God were the author of evil and we were his victims. That is to say, if we keep the model of the king of the universe and the creatures are all subjects of the king, then a God who is responsible for evil is being very unkind to other people. But in this theory, God is not another person. There are no victims of God. He's never Well, I think that people are more impressed today by the sheer physical demonstration of it. Mm-hmm. And the inevitability of these facts, which must make us, therefore, respect the social and physical environment, because it's you. In this understanding, God is transcendent in the sense of transcending all things. That is to say, God is not a thing, and it transcends every possible conception. The difficulty with the ordinary transcendent God is that he's made another thing, only the top thing. And when we relate to God as to another person, well, he's just another person, but top person, big boss. But true transcendence means that God is not a thing or an event, because in this way of understanding, there are no things. Things are abstractions. And the same way with events. Because the ideas of things and events are a calculus with which to describe the flow of life, just as we use point instants to measure curves, even though the curve is continuous. See, life is a sort of Rorschach plot. All natural forms are wiggly. And that's very inconvenient, because wiggly things are slippery. And if you want things to be definite, it's like somebody in the far-off times looked at mountains through a fishing net. And because the holes of the net were evenly spaced, he could measure the mountain. And there's a recent Russian poem which has a beautiful image in it of the world as a ball in a net bag. And those are the lines of latitude and longitude.
Well, is it your idea that in order to take seriously that God is transcendent, that He's beyond all our conceptions, that you're not suggesting that we do away with imagery, but that
No.
we just look at them in a relative sense? Is that right?
What you do is this. When you have reached the point of being able to do away with imagery, you can go back to imagery. And then when we do that, I prefer the most frankly anthropomorphic imagery. Because there's less and less danger of its being taken literally. But when we go to the transcendent aspect, I don't want to mix the idea of transcendence with the idea of royalty. Because then you get a transcendence which is unrelated to you. God ceases to be the ground of your being, but becomes the ceiling of your aspirations.
Separate what you've been saying, the Buddhist element,
well, it depends fundamentally what you mean by how you use these words. You can use the word unreality in a pejorative sense, but you can also use it in a good sense. When a play is put on, or when a marvelous stage magician appears, we are delighted that he produces an illusion. And we think it's magnificent and say, hooray, good illusion. So in the same way, the more optimistic aspects of Hinduism and Buddhism look upon the world illusion as magnificent. And although it's unreal, in the sense that it's not eternal, and it isn't the ground, it isn't the final reality of being, so far as they're concerned, the only reality is God, or the Godhead. And that's what there is. But the miraculous quality of this reality is that it can appear to be everything else besides.
It's only real if it's eternal.
Yes. In other words, unreality has what you might call relative or derived reality. But what they mean by unreality is that it is not. It is something that comes and goes. I mean, if we're going to talk to each other, we have to agree upon some game rules. And somebody tries out a rule and see if that will work, and somebody else says, yeah, that's a good idea, let's keep it that way. And so the societies and communities eventually build up their game rules. And we have no trouble in getting people to obey the rules of grammar because we don't make such a fuss about them. You must realize that there are many possibilities of ground rules and variations. And I don't think there's any kind of basic one except this, that we feel it to be a good idea to have relations. After all, a human being is necessarily social. You don't exist without at least two others, father and mother. And we exist as society. And in this respect, the fundamental premise that I think you might be able to derive is that since the community of man and living beings is a community, that we need ground rules that implement this and express it, although they may be very varied. Because you see, the biological community is a mutual eating society. Well, I mean, we've decided that it's a good idea that the show go on. And so this has some connection with the metaphysical fact that the Lord is putting on the show. And so, but you see, in this room, there's a perfectly clear distinction between up and down. But this is not abolished by the fact that this room is also in interstellar space where there is no such distinction. And so in the same way, the rules of ethics depend on their ground just in the same way as everything you see depends on having eyes, or everything you hear on the radio depends on there being a diaphragm in the speaker. Even though anything can come over this diaphragm, the diaphragm has no influence on the message. So you can play all sorts of games, but you've got the general ground of ethics, which is the idea, let the show go on. But then it's complicated by the fact of the mutual eating society. And the guilt that we feel because we live by destroying other creatures. Now, you see, that is a real troublesome problem, which some philosophy has responded with ahimsa, harmlessness, with avoiding animal food, and all that sort of thing. But my solution of it is quite different. I feel that if you've killed a fish and it's going to give its life for you, the fish should at least have the privilege of enjoying itself in your form, into which it has become transmuted. And therefore, it is a proper respect to cook it as well as possible and love it into a state of superb edibility. And then it's your duty to the fish to enjoy it, you see. And this is the meaning of "this is my body which is given for you," if you look at it that way. This is my blood which is shed for you. You see the crushed wheat and the crushed grapes. The life is sacrificial. And he says, this is the blood shed for the remission of sins. So don't feel guilty about it. So the problem is, you see, in the subordinate conflicts, which are essential to the continuation of the system as a whole, to make them contained conflicts. In other words, instead of eating so much whale that we obliterate the race of whales, we have to farm whales and take care of them. We have to replenish the soil. This is the terrifying thing. I mean, for example, let's take chickens. The stores are being flooded with non-chickens and pseudo-eggs because these chickens are raised in cell blocks, fed on chemicals, on the superstition that anything fed to a chicken will turn into a chicken. And they taste just like that. They've never scratched around in the sun or anything. And that's not proper love of one's food. Even if you're going to kill it, you say, I love you so much I could eat you. There's a great Buddhist image called Indra's net, and it likens the universe to a net of jewels. Imagine a spider's web in the morning dew. And every dewdrop, it contains the reflections of all the others. Now, every dewdrop stands for what is called in Japanese a ji, which means a thing event. And so they say of this jiji muge, between thing event and thing event, there is no blockage. So this is called the doctrine of the mutual penetration or interpenetration of all things. So this is an organic image because it is a system of order which doesn't have a boss keeping it in order. You see, you can see something in the same way in the construction of the human body. There are two arguments about the body. One is that one is fundamentally and basically a stomach. In fact, you're a tube. And the object of this tube is to put things in at one end and let them out at the other. This maintains the tube, but also wears it out. So the tubes have ways of producing other tubes to go on doing the same thing. Well, therefore, in the course of time, they evolve ganglia at one end with sensitive instruments and eyes and ears, the better to find things to put in at one end and let out at the other. And in this case, the brain is simply an outpost of the stomach. But then there's the other and equally forceful argument that the brain took longer to evolve and therefore came later because it's a more subtle and sophisticated thing. But the stomach is simply the servant of the brain. It's a gadget that exists to provide energy and fuel for the mental organism. Of course, this is part of the ancient argument that has always gone on in Western philosophy between the people who represent the school of prickles and the people who represent the school of goo. The prickles people would be nominalists. Goo would be realists. Prickles would be classicists. Goo would be romanticists. Prickles would like to believe that the ultimate constituents of matter are particles. Goo people would prefer waves. Prickles go in for logical positivism and statistical psychology and rigorous research. And goo people prefer mysticism and poetry and music. And in theology, Prickles people come on saying the definite and clear teaching of the church is it is requisite that we have a firm biblical foundation for ethical monotheism. You can hear the Prickles. I call it intellectual porcupinism. But the Prickles say of the goo people, they're disgusting. They are vague and wishy-washy and have unclear thinking. And the goo people say of the Prickles people, they're all made of bones. They just rattle. They have no flesh on it. They know the words, but they don't know the music. Now, the truth of the matter is, you see, as between Prickles and goo, that you wouldn't be able to know you were prickly unless you could have goo to compare yourself with. Whereas the gooey people wouldn't know about goo unless they could compare themselves with the prickly people. And so I discover more and more in the pursuit of philosophy that I don't know what I think unless somebody disagrees with me. Therefore, I become dependent upon my opposite. And this, again, is the theory of groups. The saved group needs the damned group. And so, but life is, of course, gooey prickles and prickly goo. It all depends on how you look at it. Insofar as there is a motivation for ethics, you have a complex, you have a hierarchy of motivations. You have the basic thing that the show should go on. Then, though, there's a lot of gamesmanship has to be played beyond that. Who are you going to eat? You see, well, you make the rule not to eat your own species. You eat some other kind of species. And then there are all sorts of one-upmanship things that can't very well be avoided. I'm more tolerant than you. Do you know that game? I'm more ready to admit my anxiety than you are. Hinduism is not really a missionary religion at all. Hinduism regards all religions as manifestations of the way to the one. I increasingly avoid religious arguments because I see that Everybody has their own way of doing it. It's like a garden where there are all sorts of different species which are mutually interdependent. I do a bit object to the people who are on a missionary basis and say our religion is the best religion and you all ought to believe it. I think the mission should be abandoned, frankly. No, you must understand that within a unity there are distinctions, because you cannot realize unity without distinctions, or vice versa.
Then there must be a harmony of these conflicting factors.
That's right. That's the point. Life is a harmony of opposing tensions, as in the lyre and the bow, to quote Heraclitus.
Isn't this the essence of Mahayana Buddhism?
Yes. The G.G. Mudike doctrine is the peak doctrine of all Mahayana philosophy. It is given conceptual form, yes, but when you work on this, you work on it in a non-conceptual way. You see, if you approach Mahayana study from the intellectual viewpoint, you eventually find yourself in a bull session in which the presiding guru will demolish every idea that you have and show that it's untenable. And then you'll say, well, what would you suggest? And he doesn't say anything.
This is where we are.
And then, you see, you are about, this people can get very passionate under these circumstances, and they get very unhappy. But the teacher seems to be all right. So what happens is that there's an inward transformation takes place. The intellectual process becomes a psychological process in which you suddenly let go of everything. And you see the point. Only the point wasn't words. Just as the point of when you eat, you don't eat the menu. A lot of philosophy is trying to translate the dinner into the menu all the time. You see, what happened was...
Feeling that there's no earthly conception in that.
Yes. What happened was this, that when Ludwig Wittgenstein finished the Tractatus and published it about 1922, the last words in it were, of that which one cannot speak, one should remain silent. And this was an epochal moment in Western philosophy where all philosophy departments should have immediately gone into meditation. But since the academic world doesn't know whether a philosopher is really working if he doesn't say anything, you think he's goofing off, you see. And therefore, everybody has to go on talking and publishing and thinking up new problems instead of going into supreme contemplation.
You see, most people go through life under the strange illusion that other people make them angry, that the world out there with its noise and nonsense somehow creeps inside and shakes the calm from within. But that's rather like blaming the mirror for the expression on your face. The truth is, nobody can bother you. They can only touch the part of you that is already disturbed. And the more you try to fight it, the more entangled you become in the very net you're trying to escape. Peace doesn't come by stiffening against life, but by realizing there's no one to stiffen. The waves rise and fall, and the ocean never minds. In the same way, anger, irritation, frustration, they come and go, but they are not you. To be unbothered is not to build a wall around yourself, but to see that there was never a separate self to defend in the first place. You see, when something happens, a disrespecting word, a sudden disappointment, a rude interruption, there's a tiny instant before you react. Most people never notice it. They leap from stimulus to response like a spark from flint, and then wonder why they feel burned. But in that small space, that fraction of a moment before the mind begins to chatter, lies your freedom. That's the gap where life gives you the chance to wake up, instead of merely react. The event itself is neutral. It has no meaning until you give it one. When someone calls you a fool, the insult only works if you believe in the fool they're talking to. If you don't, the words just vanish into thin air. So the game is not about controlling what happens, because that's impossible. It's about watching what happens within you and realizing, I don't have to pick that thought up. Anger only asks one thing of you, participation. The moment you stop playing, it dies of neglect. To react less is not weakness. It's the highest form of intelligence. It means you've remembered that you were never the puppet. One of the great sources of human misery is the quiet expectation that other people should know better. We spend an extraordinary amount of time waiting for the world to behave sensibly, as if everyone else secretly agreed to follow our rulebook. But of course they didn't. They never signed your invisible contract. They're simply playing their own game, completely unaware that you expected them to dance to yours. And when they don't, when they lie, forget, interrupt, disappoint, we feel offended, as though the universe itself has made some terrible mistake. Yet it hasn't. That's just the mind insisting they shouldn't be like that. But they are. Expecting people to act like you is like expecting the cat to bark because you're in the mood for a dog. When you give up demanding harmony from the world, you begin to laugh at how seriously you once took everyone else's behavior. And laughter, you see, is the sound of freedom returning. Once you stop expecting people to behave like you, another realization quietly dawns. You also stop needing them to agree with you. Because disagreement, you see, is just diversity in disguise. The same life that makes trees grow crooked makes minds grow in different directions. It's rather silly to demand that everyone see through your eyes when their windows open onto entirely different skies. And that's where most of our suffering begins. Not in what people do, but in our desperate urge to make them see it our way. So before we can ever find peace with others, we must loosen our grip on this idea of being right, this little badge we polish and wear upon the chest of me. We are terribly concerned, you know, with being right. It's one of our favorite addictions, the sweet intoxication of certainty. We argue, we defend, all to protect this fragile little castle called my opinion. But what if being right isn't the point at all? What if life isn't a debate to be won, but a dance to be enjoyed? Because notice, every time you must be right, someone else must be wrong. And so the world divides itself neatly into enemies and fools, all invented by your need to feel secure. The truth doesn't belong to anyone. It plays hide and seek through all of us. And the moment you stop chasing it, it comes and sits quietly beside you. When you drop the obsession with being right, you begin to listen, not to prepare a counter-argument, but to truly hear. You find that peace isn't born from victory. It comes when there's no longer anything to defend. So let others cling to their certainties. Let them win, because the one who no longer needs to win has already found the only thing worth keeping. It's peace. And when you no longer need to be right, you'll notice something quite extraordinary. Other people's opinions begin to lose their gravity. For so long, our sense of being right was tied to our sense of being somebody. And when that somebody feels threatened, even the gentlest disagreement sounds like thunder. But once you stop defending an image of yourself, the thunder becomes only noise, and the sky remains perfectly clear. You realize that what people say about you is simply an echo of their own mind, a reflection bouncing off their own glass. If you mistake that reflection for your face, you will spend your life trying to polish someone else's mirror. It's rather curious how much power we give to sound. Someone utters a few vibrations through the air, a sentence, a label, a careless remark, and suddenly your entire sense of self begins to tremble. You take their words, wear them like tattoos, and then wonder why you feel marked. But tell me, what exactly is being wounded? The sound passes, the air settles, and all that remains is your idea of what it meant. You see, the insult doesn't live in their mouth. It lives in your memory. When someone says you're foolish, that statement doesn't describe you. It describes their vision, their mood, their moment. Why let their passing weather become your climate? To depend on another's praise or blame is to hang your heart on a wind chime. Every breeze becomes a storm. Freedom begins when you realize that nothing anyone says about you has anything to do with who you actually are. Because who you are is not an opinion. It's the silence before every word. And silence, thank God, cannot be offended. Now, this doesn't mean you must let everyone trample through your garden while you sit smiling in eternal bliss. No. No. Love without intelligence becomes sentimentality, and peace without clarity becomes passivity. You see, protecting your energy isn't about building walls. It's about knowing where your garden ends and the wild forest begins. You can welcome visitors, but you needn't let them pitch a tent on your soul. Most people confuse kindness with compliance. They think to be spiritual is to say yes to everything, to be endlessly available, endlessly forgiving, endlessly exhausted. But even the sun sets, and even the ocean withdraws from the shore. Boundaries are not barriers. They are expressions of balance. When you say no, you're not rejecting the other. You're honoring the rhythm of your own being. Because if you give when you're empty, you offer not love, but resentment dressed as virtue. It's a funny thing. When you finally stop overextending yourself, you discover that life doesn't fall apart. It simply rearranges itself around your peace. And peace, unlike exhaustion, doesn't need to be earned. So, protect your energy not by closing the heart, but by staying rooted in yourself. Like a tree that bends with the wind but never forgets where it stands. When you no longer feel the need to defend an image, you find that silence begins to speak for you. It's not the silence of avoidance or repression. It's the silence that comes when there's simply nothing left to say. Most people imagine strength as volume, as assertion, as a firm voice that must be heard. But real strength often sounds like nothing at all, because truth doesn't argue, it just is. When someone throws anger at you, what happens if you don't throw it back? It falls to the ground like a stone that has lost its target. And in that quiet, something extraordinary occurs. Their fury begins to echo only in their own mind, while yours remains still, like a pond untouched by the wind. You see, silence is not a retreat. It's a refusal to participate in madness. It's not submission. It's sovereignty. It's saying without words, I will not be drafted into your war. When you stop reacting, the world reveals its true pace. Slow, rhythmic, almost musical. You find that you don't have to win arguments or prove points. You simply have to be still enough to hear life humming beneath the noise. And that hum, that quiet background of existence, is what people spend lifetimes chasing without realizing it has been humming through them all along. When you no longer rush to defend or explain, you begin to see something very curious about other people. They are mirrors, not obstacles. Every irritation, every insult, every criticism, It's life holding up a reflection of your own unfinished business. That's why certain remarks sting, while others pass like wind. The sting only finds what's already tender. So rather than blaming the messenger, look at what they've touched. You may find that the world isn't against you at all. It's simply showing you where you still hold resistance. The people who bother you the most are often your best teachers in disguise. They reveal the exact place where you're not yet free. And once you see this, you stop taking things so personally. The moment someone tries to provoke you, you almost want to thank them. Not because you enjoy the jab, but because they've helped you spot another knot you can now untie. That's the secret. People lose their power to bother you. The instant you realize they were never enemies, only mirrors polishing you back to clarity. And once you begin to see others as mirrors, something softer begins to unfold. You stop needing the reflection altogether. You no longer cling to the role of the one who must learn, or the one who must be calm, or even the one who must not be bothered, because all of those are still little masks, still the self trying to fix itself. Letting go isn't something you do. It's what happens when you stop holding on. Just as the hand releases a stone when it grows tired of grasping, the heart releases its burdens when it grows tired of pretending to control. You see, anger, resentment, and hurt, they're just the mind's way of saying, I haven't yet accepted what already is. But when you finally see the futility of resistance, when you stop demanding life to be polite, it becomes beautifully simple. People say what they say. The world moves as it moves. And you remain undisturbed, like the sky behind all weather. To let go is not to forget, nor to forgive in any official sense. It's to wake up and realize there's nothing to forgive because there was never anyone separate to offend. The play goes on, the actors shout their lines, and you, at last, can sit in the audience, smiling, knowing it was all theater from the beginning. And in that smile, you discover the secret you were chasing all along. Nothing and no one can bother you. When you've stopped mistaking the play for real life.
Have you ever dreamed of one day standing firm like a rock in the middle of a waterfall, indifferent to criticism, unafraid of being abandoned, unshaken by the invisible cuts that others leave behind, unintentionally or deliberately? You imagine yourself becoming a steel statue, cold, invulnerable, so that finally you can rest. Let go of the burden of always having to be okay, always strong, always maintaining the perfect image that even you have grown tired of building. But pause for a second. Listen to this, not as empty advice, but as a whisper from the very darkness you're trying to avoid. The more you try to escape pain, the tighter it clings to you. The higher you build your walls, the more you become a prisoner in your own fortress. The more you pretend I'm fine, the more pain seeps through every crack, gnawing at you from within until you're exhausted yet still forcing a smile. This isn't a lecture on weakness. This is a call to courage. Pain isn't an enemy to destroy, but a messenger from the depths of your soul. It doesn't come from the venomous words out there, not from betrayal or the voids others leave behind. It only truly stabs you when it touches an old wound, the story you keep replaying in your head, the fear of abandonment, the belief that if I'm good enough, strong enough, lovable enough, no one will hurt me again. You see, the world doesn't have absolute power to break you. That power lies in how you receive what happens. One person can be rejected and still smile as they move forward, because there's no empty space left inside for old pain to echo. Another can collapse from a single cold glance, because that look awakens a chorus of past rejections. So where's the difference? Not in the event, but in the internal point of contact. The same arrow, but some wear armor, others bare their chest. The armor here isn't coldness or numbness, that's just a fake shell bound to crack sooner or later. Real armor is awareness, knowing exactly where your wound is, why it's bleeding, and instead of covering it, you sit down, look it straight in the eye and whisper, "I see you." That's when the miracle happens. Not because the pain disappears, but because it loses its power. It's still there, still aching, but it no longer controls you. You no longer react like a puppet on strings. You observe, you feel, and you choose how to respond. But before stepping into that journey, admit a hard truth. You're still trying to control the world. You believe that if you're smart enough, kind enough, talented enough, life will treat you fairly. You live in constant tension, anticipating every twist, defending against every possibility of hurt. And that very control is the rope binding you tightest. You don't need more defense techniques. You need more light. Light shining into the corners you call the past, mistakes, shame. Light doesn't erase darkness, but it turns darkness from a lair of demons into just a part of your house, old, dusty, but yours. And here's the key. Freedom doesn't lie in the world changing, but in you stopping giving the world power. Everything outside only has strength when it finds an echo inside. When that echo falls silent, not because you cover your ears, but because you've made peace with it, then even if the wind howls, you stand still. If you're nodding, if something in your chest is stirring, then pause for a second and place your hand on your heart. Feel the beat. That's the reminder. You're still alive, still have the chance to go deeper. The next part will take you down one more level, where automatic reactions, sudden anger, wordless sadness, all have origins. They're not random. They're letters from the forgotten part of you. Are you ready to open the envelope? Imagine your life as a ship speeding through the dark night. On deck, you declare yourself captain, holding the wheel, barking orders, adjusting sails, checking the compass. You believe you're leading the journey, but in the pitch black hole below, there's someone else, nameless, faceless, quietly pulling the throttle, dropping anchor, even stoking the engine fire. Every time the ship suddenly veers, you're surprised, irritated, blaming the waves outside. You have no idea that the real driver has never come on deck. That driver is the unconscious. Not some vague mist, but a complete operating system. Buried memories, suppressed emotions, forbidden desires, fears of abandonment. It never sleeps. It works 24 hours a day, sending signals through sudden anger, unexplained tears, rational decisions you later sabotage. You ask, why does an offhand comment shatter me? Because that comment isn't offhand. It's the key that fits an old lock. The lock named not good enough, unworthy, will be left behind. You hear the click, and the whole door to the past swings open. Images of parents turning away, friends going silent, lovers disappearing. The present words are just the fuse. The bomb was planted long ago. And what do you do with the bomb? You seal the lid. You say, don't think about it, forget it, be strong. You shove it into a dark corner, cover it with dust labeled, I'm fine. But the bomb doesn't vanish. It builds pressure. One day, a light breeze is enough to detonate it, and you call that a bad day. Alan Watts once laughed. You can't control the river by standing on the bank shouting commands. You have to jump in, let the current take you, then learn to swim with it. The unconscious is the river. The more you resist, the harder it pulls. The more you pretend not to see it, the more it surfaces as repeating relationships, self-destructive habits, midnight anxiety. But there's another way. Sit down with the driver in the dark, not to chase him away, not to seize the wheel, just to look him in the face. Ask, who are you? What do you want? What are you afraid of? At first he'll growl. He'll hurl horrific images at you. The time you were laughed at in class, the time you begged someone not to leave, the time you stood alone in a crowd. Don't run. Don't shout. Just stay. As Watts said, the only way to master a nightmare is to step into it and ask what dance it wants to do. When you stay, something strange happens. The driver is no longer the enemy. He's a misunderstood protector. He pulls the throttle because he believes slowing down is dangerous. He drops anchor because he fears you'll drift into deeper waters. He stokes the fire because he's afraid you'll freeze in your own loneliness. Everything he does stems from a distorted loyalty to the child version of you who still believes, if I don't control, I'll die. And this is when you reach out, thank you for keeping me alive. I'm grown now. I can drive. No need to fight. No need to exile. Just dialogue. Every time you do, an invisible rope loosens. The ship stops jerking. You start to feel the true rhythm of the journey. Sometimes fast, sometimes slow, sometimes rocking, sometimes still. But don't celebrate yet. The driver won't hand over the keys immediately. He needs proof you won't banish him back to the dark. The only proof is consistency. Today, anger flares. You don't suppress it. Don't lash out. Just ask, where are you from? Tomorrow, fear of abandonment rises. You don't rush to text begging. Just whisper, I know you're here. I'm not running. The more you dialogue, the more you realize irrational reactions aren't irrational. They're maps. Every anger points to where your voice was stolen. Every sadness leads to the moment you learn to fake happiness. Every anxiety is a warning from the part of you that still believes, if I'm not perfect, no one will stay. And this map isn't for you to fix yourself. No one needs a new ship. You just need to understand the mechanics of the old one. When you know which throttle overheats the engine, which anchor is too heavy, which sail is torn, you're no longer surprised. You drive with the unconscious instead of being driven by it. Now you stand at the edge of the abyss. Behind is the familiar deck. Shouts of hold the wheel, clanging metal of must control, whistling wind of don't let anyone see you weak. Ahead is open space, no compass, no map, no promise of safety. Only one requirement. Let go of the shell. The shell isn't your skin. It's the persona, the mask you've worn since you learned to say, good child, good student, don't cry. It's the story you tell to be loved. I'm the strong one, need no one, fear nothing. It's the wall you built to hide the nights curled under blankets, the heartbreaks you smile through. Alan Watts laughs. You think you are the mask? Then fear losing it. But the mask can't breathe. Only when you take it off do you inhale real air. The death of the shell isn't a dramatic moment. It's thousands of small ones. The time you don't retaliate when insulted. The time you admit I'm scared instead of I'm fine. The time you sit with pain instead of rushing to blame someone. Each time, a piece flakes off. At first you panic. If the mask is gone, who will love me? Then you realize the mask was what made you lonely. When the shell cracks, you enter the refining fire. Not hellfire, but purifying fire, the kind that doesn't burn, just melts away what's fake. In that fire, you see, fear of abandonment isn't truth about you, but a survival lesson from childhood. If I'm not good, Mom will be mad. Explosive anger isn't your personality, but a suppressed scream from all the times you swallowed tears to keep the peace. Need for recognition isn't ambition, but a hole from times your achievements were dismissed, love measured by grades. The fire doesn't judge, it just illuminates. And in that light, you're no longer the wounded one or the one who must be strong. You're just present. But the fire is hot. It demands you sit still. No running for comfort. No hastily gluing the mask back. Just sit. Let the heat seep into every cell. Watts says, don't try to put out the fire. Let it cook you. Raw rice is bland. Cooked rice is fragrant. In this process, you'll meet inner death. Not physical death, but the death of the old self. The old self has names. I must be loved to exist. I must control to be safe. I must be perfect to be worthy. When these mantras dissolve, you'll pass through emptiness, a silence so deep you hear blood rushing in your ears. Don't fill the emptiness with alcohol, work, new love, or empty philosophy. Emptiness is the delivery room. In it, something new is forming. Not a better version of you, no one needs an upgrade. But the original version, the child once taught to hide tears, now allowed to cry. The adult once forced to be strong, now allowed to be weak. The human who lived to be loved, now loves without needing return. And here's the paradox. Only when you accept disintegration do you become invulnerable. Because now, there's nothing to lose. No image to protect, no story to defend. You just are no need to prove it. Watts tells of a Zen master with a robber's knife at his throat. Go ahead and cut. I don't claim this head as my own. The robber trembles and flees, not from fear of death, but because there was no place to strike. The next part will take you out of the fire into the dawn after the long night, where you no longer need armor because you are the armor, where pain still comes but no longer leads you astray, where you live from the center, not the surface. You've walked through the fire. The ashes are still warm under your feet, but the air has changed. No more stinging smoke, just the scent of damp earth after rain. The shell has fallen. The mask has shattered. You stand there, bare, with nothing to cling to, and the strangest thing is you don't feel dead. You just feel alive for the first time fully, without acting, without holding an image, without proving anything. This isn't a dazzling moment to snap and post online, not a state of I've awakened to brag about. This is the everyday state, as simple as brewing morning tea, hearing birds on the porch, and knowing you don't have to be okay to be allowed to exist. Alan Watts once said, when you realize there's no one to become, that's when you truly start living. Living from the center means when criticism flies at you, you hear it, feel a slight sting in your chest, but the sting doesn't swell into a storm. You know, this is an old scar being touched. It reminds me I once believed I had to be perfect. I don't believe that anymore. Then you smile, nod, and keep walking. No need to justify. No need to fight back. It means when an ex texts, I miss you, you don't rush back to fill a hole. You read, breathe deep, and reply, or don't from a place of inner fullness, not lack. It means when your boss yells at you in front of everyone, you don't shrink, don't snap back. You just look at the boss's anger, look at your fear of being belittled, and choose a response without losing yourself. You still feel pain, don't misunderstand. Dawn doesn't erase night. It just shows you pain is a guest, not the homeowner. The guest arrives, you invite them to sit, pour water, ask, what do you want to say? Then see them off without clinging. Watts tells of a Zen master in a boat on the river. Wind blows, boat tilts. Disciple panics. Master, we're going to capsize. Master smiles. Capsize, then what? The river still flows. You are the river. Not the boat, not the passenger, not the wind. You are the entire movement. When you understand this, you no longer need to become someone unhurt. You are unhurt not because you don't feel, but because there's no place left for hurt to take root. And here's the final part, also the hardest, living this every day. In the morning, instead of checking your phone for praise, place your hand on your chest. Ask, what do I need today? When angry, instead of firing off a hostile text, walk for 10 minutes. Let the anger speak its piece. Then decide if it's worth responding. When sad, instead of scrolling for distraction, sit down, cry if you need, write on paper, what is this sadness about? Then burn the paper not to erase but to acknowledge. When afraid, instead of faking confidence, say the truth. I'm afraid of failing. And strangely, telling the truth makes the fear dissolve. Awareness isn't a destination, but a habit. Like brushing teeth, like breathing. You'll still meet old lovers, still face rejection, still lose things. But the difference is, you're no longer the victim of the story, you're the storyteller. One day, you'll realize you no longer need to become invulnerable, because you already are, not because you're stronger, but because you've stopped fighting yourself. Watts ended a lecture with, life is a dance. You don't dance to get somewhere. You dance because the music is playing. Now, the music is playing. Stand up. No mask, no armor, just you. With all your scars, all your laughter, all your silence. If something in you stirs, whisper, I choose to live. You know, there's something rather amusing about the way we've been taught to talk to God. We approach it as if we're sending a telegram to some distant cosmic emperor who sits on a throne billions of miles away, checking his clipboard to see if we've been good enough to deserve his attention. We kneel down, close our eyes very tightly, fold our hands just so, and then we begin our performance. Dear God, we say, as if we're writing a letter to someone we've never met. I hope you're having a nice day up there. Now, about that thing I wanted... But what if I told you that the whole setup is backwards? What if talking to God has nothing whatever to do with talking to someone else at all? Let me ask you something. When you talk to yourself, do you use words? I don't mean when you're muttering about the grocery list or rehearsing what you're going to say to your boss. I mean in those quiet moments when you're really listening to yourself, when you're trying to figure out what you actually feel about something, what you truly want. In those moments, there's a kind of knowing that happens before words, isn't there? It's more like a recognition, a sensing, a direct awareness of what's going on inside you. Now, here's the curious thing. What we call God, what we might also call the universe, the ground of being, the eternal now, this isn't some separate entity sitting outside of you, checking off items on a list. You see, you are an expression of this whole universe. You're not in the universe like a marble in a box. You are something the universe is doing right here, right now, in the same way that a wave is something the ocean is doing. So when you talk to God, you're not really talking to someone else. You're becoming aware of what you already are. You're tuning in to the fact that this thing you call me is actually the whole cosmos experiencing itself from this particular point of view. Think about it this way. The wave rises up out of the ocean and looks around and says, my goodness, I'm separate from all this water. But of course, that's nonsense. The wave is water. It's made of water. It moves with the water. When it crashes on the shore, it doesn't die. It simply returns to what it always was, the ocean. We are like that wave. We rise up out of this mysterious source, this ground of all being, and we think we're separate from it. We think we have to shout across some vast distance to get its attention. But you can't be separate from it, because you are it. You are the universe looking at itself through your eyes right now. So what does it mean to talk to God? It means to stop, to be quiet, to listen. You see, we've got the whole thing backwards. We think prayer is about speaking, about making our requests known, about explaining our situation to some divine bookkeeper who might not have noticed what's going on in our lives. But the real art is in the listening, not the speaking. When Jesus went off by himself to pray, he wasn't reciting memorized formulas. He was becoming quiet enough to hear. He was letting go of the noise in his head, all the chatter, all the planning and worrying and rehearsing. He was settling into a deeper silence where something else could speak. And what speaks in that silence? Well, that's the whole mystery, isn't it? You might call it intuition, or guidance, or the voice of God. But what it really is reality itself making itself known to you. It's life showing you what wants to happen next. Let me tell you what happens when most people pray. They come with an agenda. They've already decided what should happen. They've figured out exactly how God should fix their problem, exactly what solution would be best. And then they dress it all up in humble language. If it be thy will, Lord, please do exactly what I've already decided should happen. But this is rather like going to a doctor and saying, I've diagnosed my own condition and prescribed my own treatment. Now please give me what I've decided I need. The doctor might smile and say, perhaps we should examine you first, don't you think? The correct way to talk to God is to come empty. To come not knowing. To come without your list of demands and requirements. To come as pure listening, pure receptivity, pure openness to what is. This is not passivity. This is not. It's something much more alive than that. It's like swimming in a river. If you try to control the water, if you try to force it to flow in a different direction, you'll exhaust yourself and probably drown. But if you relax into the current, if you feel which way it's moving and flow with it, then you discover you can navigate with incredible grace and power. When you sit quietly and stop all your internal chattering, something remarkable happens. At first, you notice all the noise, all the thoughts bouncing around like popcorn in a hot pan, all the worries, the plans, the memories, the fantasies. And your first instinct will be to try to stop them, to push them away, to make your mind blank and pure. But you see, this too is just more doing. It's more controlling. It's more of you trying to force reality to match your idea of how it should be. Instead, simply watch. Watch the thoughts come and go like clouds drifting across the sky. You don't have to do anything with them. You don't have to believe them or act on them or push them away. Just watch. And in the watching, something begins to happen. The thoughts begin to slow down. The chatter begins to quiet. And in that quietness, you begin to sense something else. A presence, an awareness, a sense of being held by something much larger than yourself. This is what Jesus meant when he said the kingdom of heaven is within you. He wasn't talking about some future reward or some place you go when you die. He was talking about this direct awareness of your unity with all that is, this recognition that you are not separate from the source of all life. Now I know what you're thinking, but what about my problems? What about the things I need help with? Are you telling me I should just sit quietly and do nothing while my life falls apart? Not at all. But here's what I am saying. The help you need doesn't come from some external deity who might or might not decide to intervene. It comes from this deeper wisdom that emerges when you get your anxious, controlling little ego out of the way. When you're all wound up in worry, when you're frantically trying to figure everything out, when you're desperately praying for God to change your circumstances, you're like a radio that's jammed with static. The signal is there, but you can't hear it because you're making too much noise. But when you become quiet, when you let go of your agenda, when you stop trying to control the outcome, something amazing happens. Solutions appear that you couldn't have thought of. Opportunities open up that you didn't know existed. You find yourself saying and doing exactly the right thing at exactly the right moment, not because you planned it, but because you got out of your own way and let life flow through you. This is what it means to pray without ceasing, as Paul put it. It doesn't mean walking around all day reciting prayers. It means living in this state of open awareness, this constant listening, this ongoing recognition of your connection to the source of all being. Let me give you an example. Suppose you're worried about money. The usual way of praying about this is to ask God to give you money, to make your circumstances better, to solve your financial problems. But notice what this does. It keeps you focused on the problem. It reinforces the belief that you don't have enough. It makes you feel powerless and dependent on some external force to rescue you. But suppose instead you sit quietly and simply become aware of your breathing. You notice the air moving in and out. You notice that you didn't have to learn how to breathe. Your body just knows. It's been breathing you since the moment you were born, and it will continue breathing you until the moment you die, without any effort or worry on your part. And then you expand that awareness. You notice that your heart is beating, your food is digesting, your cells are doing their incredible dance of life. All of this is happening without any conscious control from you. The intelligence that runs your body is vastly greater than your conscious mind. And this intelligence, this organizing principle, this creative force, it's the same intelligence that spins the galaxies and grows the trees and brings the spring after winter. It's all one thing. And you are not separate from it. You are one of its expressions. When you really feel this, when you sense your connection to this vast creative intelligence, something shifts. You stop feeling like a beggar asking for scraps. You start feeling like what you are, an integral part of this whole magnificent process. And from that place, from that sense of connection and trust, you begin to act differently. You make different choices. You see opportunities you missed before. You find resources you didn't know you had. The money problem might or might not resolve itself immediately, but your relationship to it changes. You stop being paralyzed by fear. You stop making desperate decisions. You start flowing with life instead of fighting against it. This is what Jesus demonstrated over and over again. He didn't stand apart from the Father, begging and pleading. He said, I and the Father are one. He lived from that place of unity. And from that place, the so-called miracles happen naturally, not as violations of natural law, but as expressions of a deeper understanding of how things actually work. Now you might say, but what about gratitude? Shouldn't we thank God for what we have? Of course. But again, we've misunderstood what gratitude really is. It's not about keeping God happy, like a child thanking a parent so they'll get dessert. Real gratitude is simply the recognition of the gift that existence is. Look at this. You are alive. You can see, hear, taste, touch, smell. You can think and feel and experience this astonishing world. None of this is ordinary. None of this is something you earned or deserved. It's pure gift. It's grace. It's miracle. When you really see this, when you really feel the extraordinary nature of the most ordinary moment, a glass of water, a breath of air, the warmth of the sun, gratitude arises naturally. You don't have to manufacture it or perform it. It simply bubbles up from the recognition of how blessed you already are. And this gratitude changes everything. It shifts you from a state of lack to a state of abundance, from fear to trust, from grasping to receiving, and in that state you become a channel for even more life, even more creativity, even more blessing to flow through you. So here's the correct way to talk to God. Sit down. Close your eyes if you like, or leave them open and softly focused. Take a few deep breaths and feel your body relaxing. Notice the thoughts bouncing around in your head, but don't follow them. Just watch them come and go. And then, without words, without any formulas or scripts, simply open yourself. Be receptive. Be listening. Be aware. Notice the silence underneath all the noise. Notice the space in which all experience is happening. Notice that you are aware, and this awareness is not separate from what you're aware of. You might sense a presence. You might have insights bubble up. You might simply feel a sense of peace or connection. Or nothing much might happen at all, and that's fine too. You're not doing this to get something. You're doing it to remember what you are. And then as you go about your day, carry this awareness with you. When you're washing dishes, really wash the dishes. Feel the warm water. Notice the bubbles. Be completely present to this simple act. When you're talking to someone, really listen. Don't plan your response. Don't judge what they're saying. Just be there, fully present, fully open. This is prayer. Not the words you recite, but the quality of your presence. Not the requests you make, but the awareness you bring to each moment. When you live this way, you discover something wonderful. The distinction between sacred and ordinary dissolves. Everything becomes prayer. Making breakfast is prayer. Walking to work is prayer. Listening to a friend is prayer. Because you're no longer separate from the source. You're no longer trying to get God's attention. You're simply being what you are, a unique expression of the divine, a particular way that the universe is experiencing itself. And from this place, when you do speak words of prayer, they come from a different source. They're not demands or bargaining or performance. They're expressions of this deeper awareness. They might sound like, thank you, or help me see clearly, or simply yes. You see, the correct way to talk to God is to recognize that there's no one to talk to. There's only this eternal now, this present moment, this direct experience of being alive, and you are not separate from it. You are it. So stop trying so hard. Stop performing. Stop pretending you're someone you're not, talking to something outside yourself. Just be quiet. Just listen. Just open yourself to what is, and in that openness, you'll find that you're already being prayed through. The universe is speaking itself through you. Life is living itself as you. God, if you want to use that word, is not something you talk to. It's what you are. This is the secret that the mystics have known in every tradition. That the seeker and the sought are one. That the prayer and the prayed to are the same thing looking at itself from different angles. That prayer is not communication between separate beings, but the universe becoming conscious of itself. So the correct way to talk to God is to stop talking and start listening. To stop seeking and start being. To stop performing and start experiencing. And in that simple shift, everything changes. not because God finally heard you and decided to answer, but because you remembered what you always were, an inseparable part of the whole.
There are moments, sometimes quiet, sometimes aching, when one looks over the shoulder of time and wonders what it was all for. You wake up one day and realize that years have passed, and somehow the grand story you thought you were writing seems to have slipped through your fingers. Perhaps you did everything you were told you should do. You worked hard, you stayed busy, you followed the path that others laid before you. Yet still, there is this haunting whisper that asks, was this it? It can be a very strange and lonely feeling, this sense that you have wasted something as sacred as your own life. Because you see, we are all taught that life is something to be used, something to be directed toward a purpose, something that must amount to something in the end. And so we chase after the idea of meaning like a man chasing his own shadow. But the more you run after it, the further it seems to recede. This idea of waste only appears when we measure life by a story we believe it should have followed. You were supposed to be somewhere by now. You were supposed to have done something, become someone, proven something. And yet here you are, standing still, looking at the world and feeling as if everyone else is moving ahead while you are being quietly left behind. But the strange thing about that feeling is that it never quite tells the truth. Because what if what you call wasting your life is only your life refusing to be wasted on the wrong things? What if your stillness is not failure, but rest? What if the roads you didn't take were simply the ones that were never yours to walk? You see, we live in a world obsessed with progress. Everything around us is designed to convince you that you must constantly be moving towards something, producing something, improving something, achieving something. But in that endless striving, you forget how to be. You forget that the meaning of life is not found at the end of a path, but in the simple act of walking. The oak tree does not rush to grow. The clouds do not hurry across the sky to arrive at a destination. And yet, we are convinced that stillness means stagnation, that silence means absence, that not knowing means failure. The idea that you have wasted your life is built on a comparison. You look at what others have done, what they have achieved, where they are, and then you measure your own existence against their imagined success. But comparison is a trick of the mind. It turns life into a contest, when in truth it was never a race at all. You are not running toward meaning, you are meaning unfolding. Consider this. If a flower were to bloom at midnight, hidden from every eye, would it still be beautiful? Would its fragrance be any less sweet because no one saw it? The flower does not bloom to be seen. It blooms because blooming is its nature. In the same way, your life does not need to be seen, measured, or admired to be worthwhile. You exist because the universe willed it so. And that, by itself, is enough. The feeling that life has been wasted often arises when the story you told yourself about who you were supposed to become begins to fall apart. But every story must dissolve for truth to appear. There comes a moment when the masks grow heavy, when the ambitions no longer excite you, when the old dreams start to feel like clothes that no longer fit. And that moment, though it feels like despair, is actually the beginning of something miraculous. It is the unraveling of illusion. For so long you believed you were on your way to somewhere, but where exactly? You were never truly going anywhere because you were never truly separate from the place you longed to reach. You are already there. The journey was never about arriving. It was about realizing that you had been home all along. Many people come to this realization late in life, sometimes after decades of striving. They wake up one morning, see the lines on their face, the gray in their hair, and they think, what was it all for? They look at the possessions, the status, the roles they played, and none of it feels real anymore. And that can be a terrifying moment, but it can also be the first true breath of freedom you have ever taken. Because when you no longer believe you must become someone else to be worthy, you begin to live. Let me tell you a small story. There was once a monk who spent his entire life searching for enlightenment. He meditated for years, fasted, studied sacred texts, and traveled from teacher to teacher. Yet peace always seemed to elude him. One day, exhausted and old, he gave up. He sat beneath a tree and said to himself, "I have wasted my life." But as he sat there, a gentle breeze passed through the leaves, and he noticed the sound of the wind, the sunlight flickering through the branches, the simple stillness of the world. In that moment, he began to laugh, because he realized that all along he had been searching for something that had never been lost. The same is true for you. You cannot waste your life any more than you can waste the sky. You may delay awareness, but the totality of life remains untouched by your choices. Even the mistakes, even the regrets, are part of the great unfolding. Nothing is outside of it. Nothing is wasted. You see, your idea of waste depends on your idea of time. You imagine a line, a past behind you and a future ahead, and you judge where you stand along that line. But time is not a line. It is a dance. The past is not gone. It is alive in you now as memory, as experience, as the invisible current shaping this very moment. The future is not waiting. It is already being born through your thoughts, your breath, your presence. And this moment, this one right now, is eternity disguised as now. So when you say, "I have wasted my life," what you are really saying is, "I have not noticed that life has always been here," because it has. It never went anywhere. Regret is the mind's way of trying to rewrite a story that was never yours to control. It is an echo of resistance, a refusal to accept the perfection of imperfection. But the moment you stop arguing with your past, the moment you allow every mistake to simply be part of the fabric of what made you, a quiet peace begins to emerge. That peace is not indifference. It is understanding. Perhaps you feel you spent too long in the wrong job, or loved the wrong person, or chased dreams that dissolved into dust. But what if none of that was wrong? What if each step, each heartbreak, each detour was essential in leading you to this very awareness? Life, after all, is not a straight path. It spirals, it loops, it doubles back, it confuses you on purpose so that you may eventually see the futility of trying to control it. And once you see that, a beautiful thing happens. You stop trying to win life. You begin to live it. The great error of modern man is that he measures his worth in productivity. You are not a machine. You are a mystery. You are not meant to function efficiently. You are meant to experience deeply. You are meant to feel the full weight of being alive, the joy, the loss, the uncertainty, the beauty, the grief. Every part of it is sacred. If you could only step back and see your life not as a series of failures or missed opportunities, but as a single piece of art, a painting in progress, you would realize that even the dark strokes are necessary for the light to shine. The contrast is what gives the picture depth. Perhaps you cannot see it now, but someday you will. You will look back and see that nothing was wasted. Every wrong turn led you home. Every heartbreak opened your heart a little wider. Every delay prepared you for what could not be rushed. The truth is that life cannot be wasted, because life is not a possession. You cannot lose what you never owned. You can only forget that it was never yours to control. So, if you feel you have wasted your life, I invite you to look closer. Look at the way the light falls on your hands. Look at the breath moving through your chest. Look at the small, miraculous act of awareness that allows you to even ask this question. This moment, right here, is your life, and it is whole. When you truly see that, something within you softens. The tension of regret begins to dissolve, and in its place comes a deep, unshakable peace. Not the peace of escape, but the peace of recognition. Because the truth is, you were never off track. There is no track. There is only this infinite unfolding, and you are part of it, now and forever. That is where healing begins. That is where the illusion of waste ends. When you begin to sense that perhaps nothing was wasted, the mind doesn't easily surrender its habit of measuring. It will try to find a new way to evaluate, a quieter scale upon which to weigh the worth of your days. It might whisper, "All right, perhaps I didn't waste my life, but surely I should be further along by now." You see, even when you stop running, the mind still wants a finish line. But there isn't one. The idea of a finish line is born from the illusion that life is a journey from ignorance to enlightenment, from brokenness to wholeness, from lostness to foundness. But there was never such a line to cross. You were never incomplete. You were never missing anything. What you call growth, what you call progress, is simply the unfolding recognition of what has always been true. Yet the human being as it is, craves story. It needs to feel that it is going somewhere. That need gives us hope in dark hours, but it also creates a subtle prison. For as long as you believe there is somewhere you must arrive, you cannot rest here. You are always just a little bit away from home. So much of our suffering comes not from the past itself, but from our attempts to rewrite it. We imagine the alternate lives we could have lived, the choices we should have made, the people we might have been if only the cards had fallen differently. But these imagined lives are ghosts. They shimmer just beyond the reach of what's real. And every time you compare your actual life to those ghosts, you dishonor the sacredness of what actually is. You were never meant to be the best version of yourself. You were meant to be the only version of yourself. The perfection you seek is not in some ideal self-image, it's in the depth of the one that already lives and breathes within you. The truth is that the feeling of having wasted your life is an invitation, not a condemnation. It is a quiet knocking from the soul, asking to be seen, asking you to stop chasing, to stop proving, to stop trying so hard to be something. The exhaustion that follows years of striving is not evidence of failure. It is the body and spirit calling you home. And coming home to yourself can feel strange at first, almost unsettling, because the person you built in your mind, the one who was supposed to be accomplished, admired, certain, and strong, begins to crumble. What remains is someone far simpler, softer, more real, someone who does not need to pretend. There is a tenderness in that breaking, like the moment you realize the wave has always been the ocean. The separation was only imagined. And with that realization comes a strange, liberating humility. You begin to see that even your mistakes were not really yours. They were movements of the universe through the particular form you call me. Now, imagine standing on the shore of your own life. Behind you, the waves of memory crash and dissolve. Before you, the horizon stretches endlessly. You could spend your whole life staring backward, watching the ripples of what has been, or you could simply turn and face the open sea. Both choices are available, neither is wrong. But one keeps you bound to what has passed. The other invites you into the mystery that has always been waiting. This moment right now is not the sum of your past, nor the promise of your future. It is life in its purest form, unadorned, unmeasured, and utterly free. The trouble is that we rarely allow it to be enough. We clutter the present with demands for meaning, for validation, for proof that it matters. But meaning, my friend, is not something you give to life. It is what life gives to you when you stop asking it to explain itself. Look at the simple act of breathing. You inhale, and without effort, the universe enters you. You exhale, and you give yourself back to it. That rhythm has been happening your entire life, unnoticed, uncelebrated, perfectly balanced. You do not ask each breath what purpose it serves. You simply breathe. And yet, each breath sustains the miracle of your being. That is how life works. Meaning emerges not from what you do to it, but from what you allow it to show you. When you loosen your grip on the idea that your life must justify itself, something beautiful happens. The ordinary begins to shimmer. You notice the way sunlight falls on your table, the sound of distant laughter, the quiet pulse of your own heartbeat. And you realize, perhaps for the first time, that this unremarkable, unplanned, unspectacular moment is the essence of living. The modern world, however, does not reward this awareness. It worships noise. It values ambition over stillness, productivity over presence, attention over understanding. You are constantly being pulled away from yourself, told that you should be somewhere else, doing something else, becoming someone else. But the truth is that every time you abandon the present to chase a future, you deepen the illusion of waste. You create a gap where none exists. This is why so many people grow restless, even when they appear successful, because deep down, the soul cannot be satisfied with applause. It only longs for truth. And truth, unlike success, cannot be achieved. It can only be seen. When you begin to live with this seeing, your relationship to time begins to change. You stop asking, how much time do I have left? And start realizing that you are time. You are the eternal now, unfolding as this moment, this breath, this heartbeat. Life is not moving through you. You are life moving. The past, then, is not a weight to carry. It is a teacher. The mistakes you think ruined, you were actually sculpting you. The losses you grieve were making space for something new to arise. You thought you were being broken. You were being rearranged. You see, the universe wastes nothing. Not a leaf that falls, not a tear that drops, not a single heartbeat. Everything is used, everything transformed. You are part of that alchemy. So how could you have wasted your life when life itself wastes nothing? Sometimes the path seems meaningless only because you're standing too close to it. Like a painting, its beauty can only be seen when you take a few steps back. You must allow the years to settle, to merge, to reveal their hidden symmetry. Only then do you begin to see the pattern. Only then does the chaos make sense. And as you begin to see that pattern, gratitude quietly replaces regret. You realize that the very moments you despised, the loneliness, the failure, the confusion, were the ones that softened your heart. They broke the shell of who you thought you should be so that something vast and tender could shine through. So, you see, you did not waste your life. You were preparing to live it. And this living has nothing to do with success or legacy. It is about seeing the sacred in the simple, the way water moves, the way your hands age, the way a small kindness lingers long after it's given. These things, though small, are the pulse of eternity. But you must learn to stay with the moment, to stay with yourself, to stay with life even when it offers no grand answers. Because when you stay, you begin to notice that the feeling of emptiness was never emptiness at all, it was spaciousness. It was room for you to finally arrive. Now, some will ask, but what about purpose? Don't we all need one? And yes, in a way, purpose gives us direction, but direction is not the same as destination. Purpose is not something you find, it is something you express through being. The tree does not need a purpose to grow, its growing is its purpose. The bird does not need a reason to sing, its singing is its being, and so it is with you. Perhaps your greatest purpose is not to achieve anything at all, but to embody awareness so fully that life can experience itself through you. That may not sound grand, but it is divine. If you can see that even one day of your life, one seemingly wasted, uneventful, ordinary day was actually filled with this quiet divine presence, then the idea of waste collapses. Because what you were calling wasted time was actually eternity playing dress up as delay. And if you can understand that, not just intellectually but inwardly, then a great peace will find you. Not the peace of resignation, but the peace of realization. The peace of knowing that you have never been outside of life's embrace. Everything that has ever happened, every failure, every detour, every regret was part of the unfolding of this awareness. It could not have been otherwise. When you truly see that, the ache of "I have wasted my life" begins to dissolve into a quiet smile, because you realize that the story you were mourning was never real to begin with. It was only a dream of who you thought you should have been. And awakening, after all, is nothing more than realizing that the dreamer was never separate from the dream. There comes a moment, often quietly, when you begin to understand that your life does not need to be different in order to be whole. It is a subtle shift, almost imperceptible at first. You stop asking, "What should I be doing?" and instead begin to listen. You start to feel that life, all along, has been whispering to you through everything you once ignored, through failure, through silence, through longing. It was never absent. You were simply too busy trying to edit the story to hear its voice. When this understanding dawns, it's not a flash of enlightenment, but more like the gradual clearing of fog. The trees of your existence, once obscured by regret and expectation, slowly come into view. You begin to see how perfectly imperfect it all was, how each stumble carved a kind of wisdom into your bones, how each disappointment softened your heart, and how even your confusion was guiding you toward clarity. This is the paradox of awakening. You find what you were seeking not by acquiring, but by relinquishing. The meaning you searched for begins to reveal itself when you stop demanding that life prove its worth. You realize that the search itself was never the problem. It was your assumption that meaning was missing that caused the ache. The feeling of having wasted your life was not the truth. It was the veil that covered it. And as that veil begins to fall, a new kind of stillness appears, not the stillness of emptiness, but the stillness of presence. The kind that exists between two heartbeats, in the quiet before you speak, in the way your chest rises without your asking. You notice that life doesn't need your permission to continue. It breathes you, it moves you, it carries you forward, regardless of your stories about it. You see, what most people call awakening is not the gaining of something new, but the gentle loss of what was never real. It's like waking from a long dream in which you spent years trying to find the meaning of the dream itself, only to realize that you were always safe in your bed. The dream was beautiful, tragic, complex, and rich, but it was never separate from the one who dreamt it. So too with life. You were never separate from the totality of it. Even in your loneliest, darkest hours, you were still held by the same intelligence that turns the planets and opens the flowers. You were never outside of that harmony, only asleep to it. To awaken, then, is not to rise above life, but to sink deeper into it, to see the extraordinary hiding within the ordinary, to realize that enlightenment was never a mountaintop, but the ground beneath your feet. You might look back now on all the years you thought were lost, and see that they were not lost at all. They were preparing you to see. They were the soil in which understanding could finally take root. Every regret was compost for wisdom. Every mistake was a seed of awareness waiting for the right season to bloom. And when that season arrives, you begin to move differently. Not because you found some grand new purpose, but because you are no longer fighting the rhythm of existence. Your actions become effortless, not because you've stopped caring, but because you finally trust the unfolding. You realize that your life was never something to manage, it was something to experience. The illusion of waste begins to dissolve because you no longer measure time in achievements, but in presence. You begin to see that 10 minutes of genuine awareness is worth more than 10 years of unconscious striving. When this recognition takes hold, even your past pain begins to glow with a strange light. You see that what once felt unbearable was, in fact, the breaking of the shell around your being. It was how life made space for itself within you, and you begin to thank the very moments that once made you curse your existence. You bow to the storm because you see now that it wasn't against you, it was refining you. And then something even deeper happens. You begin to laugh. Not out of mockery or defiance, but from the sheer relief of seeing how unnecessary all the struggle was. You realized that life had never required your control. It only needed your attention. You had been running through open fields with a blindfold on, searching for the way out, unaware that there were no walls. You may recall the times you prayed for clarity, for purpose, for a sign, and perhaps you now see that those prayers were answered not in words, but in silence. Not through instruction, but through revelation, because clarity does not come from adding more answers. It comes from letting go of all the questions that were never yours to carry. There's an old saying that the truth sets you free, but first it makes you uncomfortable. And that discomfort, that deep unease of not knowing what to do with your life, was the beginning of your freedom. It stripped you of false certainty, of borrowed dreams, of identities that were never truly yours. It left you naked before life itself. And that nakedness, that vulnerability, is the doorway to peace. Because when you stand without pretense, without the armor of who you think you should be, life finally meets you as you are. And that meeting is love. You begin to see that love was never something to find or to deserve. It was the quiet awareness that remained after everything else fell away. It is the gentle hum behind all experience, the soft current that carries every joy and every sorrow. When you touch that current, even briefly, you realize that nothing has ever truly been lost. For how can anything be lost in a universe that recycles itself infinitely? How can a life be wasted when each breath, each tear, each moment of longing becomes part of the great turning? You are not a fragment of the cosmos. You are the cosmos, looking at itself through the eyes of this particular human form. It is a most peculiar thing, you see, that a human being can spend an entire lifetime searching for themselves while never realizing they were never truly lost. And yet that is the great game we are all playing, the cosmic game of hide and seek. The universe pretending not to be itself, wandering through space and time in the disguise of you and me. Now, somewhere along the way, we forgot this game. We began to take the disguise rather seriously. We began to believe that this mask we wear, this name, this history, this bundle of memories was who we really are. And so the play became a tragedy. Because when the actor forgets he's in a play, the suffering feels very real indeed. But let us begin at the beginning, if such a thing can be said to exist. Imagine, if you will, the moment you were born, not the event itself, but the sense of entering a world that was already in motion. Nobody asked you if you wished to be here. You arrived as a mystery, blinking into a mystery. And the first thing you learned, almost immediately, was that you were something separate. The doctor said, "It's a boy," or "It's a girl." Someone gave you a name. Someone said, "This is you." And in that instant, the great forgetting began. You see, the child does not know that there is a line between itself and the world. When a baby cries, it believes the universe is crying. When it laughs, it believes the whole sky is laughing with it. But very soon, we are taught otherwise. We are told where we end and where everything else begins. That's the first illusion, that there is an inside and an outside, that you are here and the world is there. We even speak of it that way. I came into this world. But that's not how it happened at all. You did not come into this world. You came out of it in precisely the same way a wave comes out of the ocean or a leaf grows out of a tree. You are not a stranger here. You are the universe expressing itself as this particular form for a while. And yet, because of language, because of conditioning, because of fear, we begin to imagine ourselves as isolated fragments. We identify with the body, with the name, with the narrative. And we say, "I am this," and nothing more. But tell me, where exactly does this I begin? If I draw a line around your body, Is that truly the border of you? Because the air you breathe becomes your blood, and your blood becomes your thought, and your thought changes the world around you. So where do you stop and the world begin? It's quite impossible to say, isn't it? The whole thing is one continuous process, yet our minds have divided it up for convenience. We draw lines, make maps, categorize, define. But the map, you see, is never the territory. The word is never the thing. The idea of you is not you. And yet, we have mistaken the symbol for the reality. This is why people suffer. Because we have been hypnotized by words, by images, by the great myth of separateness. The ancient Hindus called this Maya, the illusion that tricks consciousness into believing it is something apart from itself. And from this illusion springs all the great human dramas: fear, greed, ambition, loneliness, the endless craving to become something more. When you think you are a separate being, the universe becomes a threat. Everything outside is either something to be conquered or something to be avoided. You must protect yourself. You must compete. You must achieve. And so you spend your life struggling to survive, never realizing that the very energy of that struggle is the same energy that moves the stars. It is rather like a wave on the ocean trying not to be wet. The wave says, I must maintain my shape, my identity. I must fight against all the other waves. And in doing so, it forgets that it is the ocean itself. You and I are doing exactly that. We have become obsessed with being somebody rather than simply being. Now, this forgetting is not a mistake. It's part of the game. The universe hides itself from itself so that it can experience the joy of rediscovery. The darkness is necessary for light to recognize itself. The silence gives meaning to sound. And in the same way, forgetting who you are is the prelude to awakening. But the tragedy of our modern life is that we've made the forgetting permanent. We have built entire civilizations around the idea of separation. We have systems that reward competition and punish stillness. We have machines that amplify distraction. We measure worth in numbers, and we mistake productivity for purpose. And so, the game has lost its laughter, the play has forgotten its script. You can see this in the way people live. They move as if haunted, always chasing, always becoming, never arriving. They think salvation lies in the next promotion, the next purchase, the next achievement. But every time they reach the next thing, it dissolves like mist, because what they are truly searching for cannot be owned, cannot be earned, cannot even be found. It can only be remembered. And so the question arises, who or what is it that has forgotten? Who is this I that believes it is lost? If you look closely, you'll find something extraordinary. You'll find that the one who seeks is the very thing being sought. You'll find that beneath all the noise and confusion, there is a silence watching everything. That silence is what you truly are. When you close your eyes at night and the whole world disappears, that silence remains. When your thoughts fade for a brief moment, something is still there, isn't it? The awareness that notices the absence of thought, that's you. Not the story, not the name, not the body, the awareness itself, that which never comes and never goes. But we are so accustomed to looking outward that we miss it. We keep expecting truth to appear in some grand revelation when it has been quietly humming beneath everything all along. Like a song that never ends, only changes its tune. And so, to remember who you are is not to add something new. It is to remove what was never real. It is to peel away the layers of conditioning, fear, and pretense until only the simple fact of being remains. That is where the journey truly begins, not in acquiring, but in noticing, not in striving, but in seeing clearly. You cannot become yourself because you already are. You can only wake up to that fact. And when you do, life begins to feel less like a prison and more like a play. The actors are the same, the scenery unchanged, but suddenly the story is light again. The laughter returns. The wave remembers it is the ocean. That is the beginning of remembering. That is the end of the dream of separation. When you awaken, even for a moment, to the truth of what you are, something remarkable happens. The world does not change, and yet it is utterly transformed. The same faces pass by, the same routines unfold, but there is a new quality to it all, a kind of luminous playfulness, as if the universe has been holding its breath, waiting for you to notice the joke. But it doesn't end there, because the moment we catch a glimpse of truth, the mind rushes in to claim it. It says, "Ah, I understand now. I've figured it out." And that, you see, is the second forgetting. The ego, clever as ever, puts on spiritual clothing and pretends to have seen the light. It becomes the seeker who has found. But remember, the moment you think you've captured truth, you've already lost it. Truth cannot be caught because it is what is doing the catching. It's a very curious situation. The more earnestly you pursue enlightenment, the more it recedes from you. Like chasing your own shadow, the harder you try, the further it slips away. Because you are what you seek. You are the awareness that is looking. And so, to look for yourself is a kind of cosmic comedy. The eye cannot see itself directly, only by reflection. This is why so many spiritual traditions emphasize stillness. Not stillness as in rigid quietness, but the stillness of understanding that there's nowhere to go, that the very act of seeking keeps the illusion alive. To sit quietly and observe is to see that the one doing the seeking is made of the same stuff as the sky, as the wind, as the stars. But here's where the pretending comes in. Even after this realization, life continues. You still have to eat, work, speak, love, and lose. You still stub your toe. You still get caught in emotion. You still wake up in the middle of the night wondering what it all means. The difference is subtle but profound. You now know it's a play. You still act your part, but you no longer mistake the mask for the face. You see, life is not something you overcome. It's something you dance with. The waves do not resist the tide. They move in harmony with it. So, too, does the awakened person move with life, not against it, not above it, but with it. To live this way is to rediscover innocence. A childlike wonder returns, not because you are naive, but because you are no longer cynical. You begin to see that everything is part of the same unfolding. The pain, the joy, the confusion, even the boredom, all of it belongs. All of it is the universe pretending to be separate, pretending to forget, so it can rediscover itself anew. But beware, the mind loves to make a project out of awakening. It says, now I must maintain my spiritual state, I must be mindful all the time. And so it creates yet another identity, the enlightened self. But that too is part of the game. The pretending continues, only now it's cloaked in holiness. The only way out is to see that there is no way out. You cannot escape the play because you are the play. You cannot stop pretending because pretending is part of what you are. The trick, then, is not to end the pretending, but to enjoy it, to see through it without denying it, to laugh at the cosmic joke rather than trying to explain it. Think of life as a grand symphony. Each note, each instrument has its place. Some play melodies, others dissonance. But the beauty lies in the whole, not in any single part. You are both the music and the musician, the listener and the sound. And to live with that awareness is to move through life with a certain grace, not the stiff grace of discipline, but the flowing grace of trust. Trust is the highest form of intelligence. It's not blind belief, it's participation. It's saying yes to the unknown. It's stepping into the rhythm without needing to know the choreography. Because when you trust the flow of life, you find it carries you exactly where you need to be. This doesn't mean you never fall. Of course you fall. But now, you understand that even falling is part of the dance. You understand that pain is not punishment, it's the universe moving through you, rearranging, refining, renewing. Every tear, every stumble is another reminder that you are alive. And perhaps that's what we forget most easily, that to be alive is not to be perfect, but to participate. The stars burn and collapse, the trees grow and decay, everything changes, and that change is not a flaw, it's the very expression of beauty. In the end, awakening is not about rising above life, but sinking fully into it. It's not about being calm all the time, but about being real all the time. It's about allowing the whole spectrum of existence to play through you, the laughter, the fear, the tenderness, the confusion, and recognizing that you are not any single note, but the silence from which all of them arise. And so, when you remember who you are, you don't vanish into some mystical void. You re-enter the world with open eyes. You smile at the absurdity of it all. You forgive more easily. You laugh more deeply. You become softer, not weaker. Wiser, not detached. You realize that love is not a feeling, but a way of seeing. You begin to recognize yourself everywhere, in the eyes of the stranger, in the sound of the rain, in the passing wind, because how could you not? The one who once believed they were lost now sees that there was nowhere to go. The one who searched the stars now sees that the light was always within. The pretending continues. But now it is joyful. You play your part beautifully because you know it's a part. You cry when the story calls for tears, and you laugh when the scene becomes absurd. And when the curtain falls, you bow not in defeat, but in gratitude. For you have remembered the secret. The universe keeps whispering that it was you all along. And so, the remembering deepens. For what begins as a glimpse slowly ripens into a way of being, a quiet knowing that hums beneath everything you do. You still move through the world as a person, with a name and a story, but something within you no longer clings so tightly to that story. You wear it lightly now, as you would a costume at a festival. You play your part with sincerity, but you no longer mistake it for who you truly are. This is where the real transformation begins, not in grand revelations or supernatural moments, but in the smallest, most ordinary acts. Making tea, walking through the rain, waiting at a stoplight. You start to notice how extraordinary the ordinary really is. The smell of earth after a storm, the texture of a wooden table beneath your hand, the faint echo of laughter drifting through a window. You begin to live with an intimacy that no philosophy can capture. This is what the mystics mean when they speak of heaven on earth. It is not a place elsewhere. It is this very life, seen clearly, without the veil of judgment or expectation. To live this way is to rediscover wonder. You see that everything, absolutely everything, is sacred because it exists. Even your own confusion, your sorrow, your restlessness, these too are part of the divine dance. But the mind, ever restless, will still try to intervene. It whispers that such peace cannot last, that surely this stillness will vanish. It begins to search for ways to hold on to the state of grace, to capture it like a photograph. Yet every attempt to hold on to stillness destroys it. For stillness is not something to be kept. It is what remains when there is no grasping. And so, you learn to let go again, not as a lesson, but as a rhythm. Letting go becomes breathing. Each inhale takes in the world, and each exhale releases your need to possess it. Life flows through you rather than around you. You realize there was never a separation to begin with, only the illusion of one. In this stage of awakening, something else happens. You begin to see that others, too, are pretending to be separate. Every stranger becomes a mirror, every argument a lesson, every act of cruelty a cry for recognition. You begin to sense the shared ache of humanity, the longing to return home, to something that was never lost. This understanding births compassion, not as an effort, but as a natural response. You see yourself in others because you finally see others as yourself. Now, compassion is often misunderstood. It is not pity, nor is it a soft sentiment. True compassion carries clarity. It does not enable illusions, but gently reveals them. When you act from compassion, you do not seek to fix anyone. You simply offer presence, a quiet reminder that they, too, are enough. And that, you see, is often the greatest healing of all, to be reminded that nothing is missing. This realization begins to dissolve fear. Fear thrives on separation. It feeds on the illusion that there is something outside you that can destroy what you are. But when you see that life and death, gain and loss, are movements of the same ocean, what is there to fear? The wave cannot fall out of the sea. It may rise and fall, but it never ceases to be water. Imagine for a moment a leaf floating down a stream. The leaf does not resist the current. It does not complain about where it is taken. It moves gracefully, not because it understands the river's path, but because it trusts the flow. You, too, can live this way. You can let yourself be carried, not by resignation, but by participation. You move with life instead of against it, and in doing so, discover that the current was never against you. As this understanding deepens, even suffering begins to look different. You stop asking, why me? And begin to wonder, what is this showing me? The pain doesn't vanish, but its meaning changes. It becomes a teacher, not an enemy. It softens the edges of the self, humbles the ego, opens the heart. You begin to see that the cracks are not signs of failure. They are the spaces through which the light enters. In time, even the idea of awakening fades. You no longer measure yourself against spiritual ideals or compare your progress to anyone else's. You simply live. You laugh when it's funny. You cry when it hurts. You fall. You rise. You begin again. You stop trying to be spiritual and start being human, which, ironically, is the most spiritual thing of all. The sages were never superhuman beings. They simply stopped pretending to be anything else. They embraced their humanity so fully that it became transparent, allowing the infinite to shine through it. To live like this is to understand that divinity is not somewhere else, waiting to be reached. It's here, looking out from behind your eyes, breathing through your lungs, pulsing in your veins. This is the quiet revolution of awareness. It doesn't announce itself with thunder or revelation. It arrives gently, like dawn through a half-open window. It changes everything by changing nothing, for it reveals that nothing needed changing. The self you were trying to fix was never broken. The world you were trying to save was never lost. To see this clearly is to rest at last. Not the rest of exhaustion, but the rest of arrival. You realize you've been home all along. Every detour, every mistake, every heartbreak was part of the journey back to what never moved. You laugh softly at the irony of it all, and in that laughter, a great peace arises. It's not the peace of escape, but the peace of inclusion. You can finally say yes to all of it, the confusion, the clarity, the birth, the death, the gain, the loss. You see that life's perfection is not in its smoothness, but in its completeness. It holds everything, and that wholeness is love. And so, you walk differently now. You no longer rush. You no longer grasp. You no longer wait for permission to be alive. You move through the world as a presence rather than a person, as an awareness rather than a role. And wherever you go, something silent and beautiful goes with you, reminding all who meet you that they, too, have never been lost. And then there comes a kind of quiet after the knowing, not the quiet of emptiness, but of fullness, as though life has finally exhaled and found itself resting in its own rhythm. You wake one morning and realize there is nothing left to search for. The seeking, the striving, even the idea of becoming someone better dissolves like mist in sunlight. You see, the moment you stop trying to arrive anywhere, you discover that you have always been here. This is the final unfolding of the journey, not a destination, but an absorption. The wave returns to the ocean, not by effort, but by remembering it was never apart. You, too, begin to live with that same natural ease. You no longer ask life for meaning, because you have become meaning itself. Everything you touch, everything you see, reflects the same still intelligence that lives within you. You start to laugh at the absurdity of the game we all play, the endless chase for validation, the frantic pursuit of success, the anxious clinging to permanence. You see it now as a cosmic dance, a play where the actors have simply forgotten it's a play. And rather than feeling superior or detached, you feel tenderness, because you remember what it was like to be caught in the script, to take every line so seriously. Compassion deepens, not as a virtue, but as understanding. You begin to notice that the boundaries between you and life are melting. The wind moves, and it feels like your breath. The rain falls, and it feels like your tears. Someone smiles on the street, and it feels like your own joy shining back at you. It's as if the whole world has turned into a mirror, reflecting only one truth. There was never two. And what becomes of fear in such a place? It loses its hold. Not because you have conquered it, but because you see through it. You see that fear was always a shadow cast by your forgetting. When you remember who you are, fear has nothing left to cling to. You realize that the great mystery of life has never been against you. It was only waiting for your cooperation. This doesn't make you invincible or indifferent. You still feel pain, you still grieve, you still stumble, but now there's a softness around it all, a kind of quiet trust that runs through every experience. You understand that sorrow and joy are not opposites, but two notes in the same song. You don't try to hold one or escape the other. You let them both play through you, and in that harmony, something timeless begins to hum. You realize that even death, that great unspoken fear, is not an ending but a rhythm, a return. It's the breath of the cosmos inhaling again. What you truly are cannot die because it was never born. It only takes form for a little while, to taste itself, to play. And when the play ends, it bows and becomes the stage once more. This understanding doesn't make you distant from the world. Quite the opposite. It draws you closer. You love more deeply, laugh more freely, forgive more easily. You no longer need to protect yourself from life, because you have recognized that you are life. Every moment becomes a prayer without words, an act of worship without worshippers. It's funny how we spend so much of our lives trying to control what was never ours. We fight the current, build walls, wear masks, and then one day you realize you don't have to do any of that anymore. You can let the river carry you. You can let the walls fall. You can let the masks drop. You can finally breathe. And in that breath, the world breathes with you. The trees sway in rhythm. The birds call in response. Even the silence feels alive. You begin to feel a subtle joy that asks for nothing, that depends on nothing. It's the joy of simply being. The kind of peace that doesn't need to be protected because it cannot be taken away. You look back at your life, all the mistakes, the detours, the heartbreaks, and you see the hidden intelligence woven through it all. Every fall was a doorway. Every delay, a redirection. Every ending, a beginning in disguise. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was wrong. It was all part of the unfolding, the remembering. And as you sit quietly, watching the sun dip below the horizon, you feel no need to hold on to it, no sorrow that it's fading, because you know it will rise again. Not because of belief, but because of rhythm. The same rhythm that moves your breath, that beats your heart, that carries the tides of the sea and the stories of your life. To live this way is not to transcend the human experience, but to be fully immersed in it without being consumed by it. You can taste the salt of tears and still smile. You can watch the seasons change without wishing them to stay. You can love without fear of loss, because you understand that love itself never leaves, only its forms change. This is what it means to awaken. Not to escape the dream, but to dream consciously. To know you are both the dreamer and the dream. You live in the world, but you are no longer bound by it. You participate in the drama, but you no longer mistake the stage for reality. You have come home to yourself, and in doing so, you have come home to the universe. And perhaps that's the most beautiful realization of all, that you were never lost, never broken, never unworthy. You were simply playing hide and seek with eternity, waiting for the moment when you'd stop searching and start seeing. Now you see. And seeing, you smile. Because the great secret, the one that sages have whispered through time, is beautifully simple. You are already what you seek. So you walk on, not to arrive, but to express, not to find meaning, but to reveal it. And as you walk, the universe walks with you, endlessly unfolding, endlessly returning, endlessly free.